You see, so many people make the mistake of believing that love is about convincing someone to choose you. They think, if I just show them how much I care, they'll finally open up. But when you're dealing with someone avoidant, someone who runs from closeness, someone who pulls back when you reach out, that approach only pushes them further away. You don't reach an avoidant heart by chasing it. You reach it by standing still in your truth. Because the moment you start chasing, you confirm their biggest fear, that love means losing their freedom. And the moment you stop chasing, you show them something they never expected, that love can exist with space, that closeness doesn't have to suffocate. Here's the truth. Avoidant people aren't afraid of love. They're afraid of losing themselves inside it. And when you show them that you're whole, that your life has meaning, joy, and self-respect outside of them, you become safe to love. Your power is not in pursuit, it's in presence. Your strength is not in convincing. It's in allowing. When you stop running after them, you give them something to move toward, a calm, grounded energy that says, I want you, but I don't need you. And that's magnetic, that's irresistible. So if you want to reach an avoidant heart, don't beg them to stay. Let them see who you are when you're no longer begging. Let them feel the peace that comes from being around someone who values connection, but never at the cost of their own self-worth. Because real love doesn't chase, real love holds space, and sometimes the way to someone's heart is not through pursuit, but through peace. You don't reach an avoidant heart by chasing, you reach it by standing still in truth. This idea may sound simple, but it's one of the most powerful lessons you can learn in love. When someone has avoidant tendencies, they are deeply sensitive to pressure, expectations, and emotional pursuit. The moment they feel someone is trying to pull them closer, their instinct is to create distance. It's not because they don't care. In fact, many avoidant individuals feel deeply, but their way of handling emotional intensity is to retreat, to create space so they can breathe. When you chase them, even with the purest intentions, they don't feel your love. They feel your urgency. And urgency, to an avoidant heart, feels like danger. Standing still in your truth means staying anchored in who you are and what you value, even when someone else pulls away. It means saying, I want connection, but not at the cost of my peace. It's a quiet confidence that says, I am not here to convince anyone to love me, I'm here to express love and allow it to return naturally. When you hold that energy, something shifts. The avoidant no longer feels cornered, they start to feel safe, because for them, safety isn't found in words or promises, it's found in your energy. They can feel when you're calm. They can feel when you're not grasping. And that calmness speaks louder than any declaration of love. When you stop chasing, you give the relationship space to breathe. You also give yourself space to see clearly. Sometimes the chase blinds you. You become so focused on winning their affection that you forget to ask whether the dynamic is truly healthy for you. Standing still gives you perspective. It allows you to observe, to understand their patterns, and to recognize your own. You may realize that chasing wasn't about them. It was about your fear of losing connection. By staying grounded, you begin to separate love from anxiety. You start acting from strength rather than fear. And this strength doesn't push the avoidant away. It invites them in. It tells them you are free here. It tells them you don't need to run because I'm not running after you. This is the paradox of love. The less you chase, the more room there is for someone to come toward you. When you're standing still in your truth, your values, your boundaries, your peace, you become magnetic. You radiate something they may not have experienced before, unconditional presence. You're not asking them to be different. You're simply being yourself. And that's the key. Reaching an avoidant heart is not about strategy. It's about energy. When you're still, grounded, and self-assured, you become the calm in their storm. You show them that love can exist without control. You show them that intimacy doesn't have to mean losing themselves. And slowly, they start to trust that maybe, just maybe, They can come closer not because you chased them, but because your stillness made them feel safe enough to stay. Chasing activates their fear, calm energy invites trust. When you chase someone with avoidant tendencies, your actions may come from love, care, or longing, but to them it feels like pressure. They interpret pursuit as a signal that closeness will cost them their autonomy. Every call, every text, every attempt to fix things or make them talk feels like emotional weight being placed on their shoulders, and the more they feel that weight, the more they instinctively pull away. It's not because they don't care, it's because they associate love with losing space. They fear being swallowed by someone else's emotions or being trapped in expectations they can't meet. So, when you move toward them with chasing energy, they don't hear, "I love you." They hear, "You need to change for me." And that's when they start retreating. Calm energy, on the other hand, is disarming. It tells them, without words, "You're safe here." It communicates that you're not trying to take something from them, not their time, not their identity, not their emotional control. Calmness doesn't mean coldness, it means grounded presence. It's the difference between demanding closeness and allowing it. When you're calm, your energy says, "I trust the process. I don't need to chase love. I create space for it." And that space feels like freedom to an avoidant heart. They don't want to be pursued, they want to be accepted. When they sense that you're not trying to change them, their walls begin to soften. Trust starts to grow in the soil of non-judgment and emotional steadiness. The beauty of calm energy is that it reflects emotional maturity. You're no longer reacting to their withdrawal with panic. You're responding with patience. You understand that their silence doesn't mean rejection, it means regulation. They pull back to find balance, not to abandon you. And when you don't punish that distance, when you don't try to force them back, you show them that love can exist without drama. Over time, they learn that being close to you doesn't mean losing control, it means gaining peace. This subtle but powerful shift allows them to open up naturally, without fear of being consumed. When your energy is calm, you also take back your own power. Chasing puts your emotional state in someone else's hands. If they respond, you feel good. If they don't, you spiral. But when you center yourself, when you breathe through the discomfort of their distance, you show that you can handle uncertainty. That stability becomes attractive not only to them, but to you. You stop operating from fear and start embodying value. You stop saying, "Please come back," and start saying, "I'm here when you're ready." An avoidant person begins to trust not because you chase them, but because your calm energy proves that you're safe, patient, and emotionally grounded. Trust doesn't grow in chaos, it grows in consistency. The moment you stop trying to pull them in and simply hold steady space, they begin to feel what love is supposed to feel like, not a trap, but a sanctuary. Avoidants aren't afraid of love, they're afraid of losing themselves. This distinction changes everything. Many people misunderstand avoidant behavior and label it as coldness, disinterest, or emotional unavailability. But in truth, avoidant individuals often crave love just as deeply as anyone else. The difference is in how they respond to intimacy. To them, closeness can feel overwhelming not because they don't value connection, but because they associate emotional dependence with loss of freedom. In their minds, being loved means being needed means being responsible, and being responsible means pressure. That pressure triggers a deep fear that they'll lose their individuality, their independence, or their sense of control. So when love starts to grow, instead of leaning in, they lean back. It's not rejection, it's self-preservation. Understanding this is the key to compassion. When you see their withdrawal as fear rather than rejection, you stop taking it personally. You realize they're not running from you. They're running from the idea of losing themselves. And the way to help them feel safe isn't to chase or convince, but to show through your actions that connection doesn't have to cost anyone their autonomy. You do this by modeling healthy independence, showing that love can coexist with individuality, that commitment doesn't erase identity. When they see that being close to you doesn't mean giving up their space, they begin to relax. Avoidant people have often learned early in life that emotional closeness comes with strings attached. Maybe they grew up in environments where affection was conditional, or where vulnerability led to disappointment. So now, when someone gets too close, they brace for loss. They expect to be smothered or controlled. That's why when you show up with calm, secure energy, when you love them without trying to fix, control, or rescue them, it surprises them. They start to realize that love doesn't have to feel like surrender. They can still be free and still be loved. To reach an avoidant heart, you must embody this truth yourself. You must show them that your happiness doesn't depend on their validation. You must demonstrate that you can enjoy connection while staying true to your own path. This is what makes you safe to love, not your intensity, not your devotion, but your balance. They need to feel that you won't disappear into the relationship, that you won't lose yourself in them, because that reassures them they won't lose themselves either. When they feel your steadiness, your self-sufficiency, your grounded presence, their walls start to lower. Because now, love no longer feels like a trap, it feels like a choice. They begin to believe that closeness can coexist with freedom. That's when an avoidant person starts opening their heart, not because you demanded it, but because your self-assuredness showed them that love doesn't take away who they are. It helps them become more of it. Power lies in presence, not persuasion. When you're dealing with an avoidant person, your instinct might be to use words, reasoning, or emotional expressions to convince them of your love. You might believe that if you just explain how much you care or show them how deeply you're invested, they'll finally feel secure enough to open up. But persuasion rarely works with someone who fears closeness. Every attempt to convince them, no matter how sincere, can feel like pressure. The more you try to pull them toward you with words, the more they feel their autonomy slipping away. It's not that they don't hear you. It's that their nervous system interprets that energy as demand, and when they feel demanded upon, their first instinct is to withdraw. Presence, however, speaks a different language, one that bypasses logic and reaches the heart. Presence is calm, grounded energy. It's not what you say, but how you show up. It's the silent confidence that says, I'm here and I'm okay. Presence doesn't need to convince. It allows connection to unfold naturally. When you're fully present, you stop trying to control outcomes. You stop chasing reassurance or clarity. You begin to embody peace, and that peace creates trust. An avoidant person learns that being around you doesn't mean being consumed by emotion. It means feeling safe in stillness. Persuasion often comes from insecurity, the need to prove your worth, to justify your feelings, or to make someone reciprocate. But love built on persuasion is fragile because it depends on constant convincing. Presence, on the other hand, comes from self-assurance. When you're present, you know your value. You don't need to be chosen to feel worthy. You know that your emotions are valid even if they aren't met with the same intensity. This self-trust allows you to show love without losing power. You don't beg for connection, you invite it. You don't demand attention, you attract it. The truth is, people don't trust words as much as they trust energy. Especially those with avoidant tendencies, they've likely heard promises before, but what they crave is consistency. Presence gives them that. It tells them, you're safe, I'm not here to overwhelm you, I'm here when you're ready. That message doesn't require explanation, it's felt. Over time, your steady presence breaks down their defenses more than any speech ever could. They begin to sense that your love isn't conditional or manipulative. You're not trying to persuade them into connection, you're simply embodying it. When you stop trying to persuade and start being present, something powerful happens. You shift from proving to being. You create emotional space, not pressure. You stop chasing outcomes and start honoring energy. And in that quiet, steady energy, love begins to grow not because you pushed for it, but because your presence made it safe to bloom. Real love holds space, not control. This truth is often misunderstood because many people equate love with closeness, attention, and constant reassurance. But love is not about holding someone tightly enough that they can't move. It's about creating an environment where both people feel free to breathe, express, and exist as they are. When you try to control love by demanding attention, overanalyzing responses, or needing constant validation, you turn something natural into something forced. For an avoidant person, this is particularly suffocating. They interpret control, even in subtle forms, as emotional captivity. The moment they sense they're being managed, fixed, or pressured, they begin to distance themselves. What they need is not control, but space, not emotional withdrawal, but respectful distance that allows them to come forward willingly. Holding space is an act of emotional strength. It means you can tolerate discomfort without rushing to fix it. You can allow silence without assuming abandonment. You can witness someone's fear without making it your job to heal it. When you hold space, you're saying, I see you, I hear you, and I'm not trying to change you. That kind of acceptance is magnetic because it communicates unconditional safety. You're not loving for the sake of reassurance. You're loving from a place of fullness. You're grounded in your worth, which allows you to give love freely, not to get something back, but because it's who you are. Avoidant individuals, more than anyone, need this form of love. They need to feel that they can be close without losing themselves. They need to trust that you won't punish them for taking a step back or guilt them for needing space. When you hold space instead of trying to control, you show them that love doesn't come with strings attached. You give them room to experience connection at their own pace. And over time, that freedom builds trust that they can return to you without being met with judgment or demands. Control is rooted in fear of losing, fear of rejection, fear of being forgotten. But when you release control, you step into power. You realize that love doesn't need to be gripped tightly to stay. What's meant for you won't require manipulation to remain. Holding space reflects inner peace, the quiet confidence that says, I can love without clinging, I can care without controlling. This balance transforms the dynamic. Instead of a push-and, pull cycle of pursuit and retreat, love becomes a dance fluid, graceful, and mutual. When you hold space, you're not stepping away from love, you're allowing love to breathe. You're trusting that emotional connection thrives not in captivity, but in freedom. And that's when love becomes sustainable, not an exhausting chase, but a calm, steady presence. The avoidant heart, once fearful of losing itself, finally finds room to rest not because it was persuaded, but because your openness showed it what safe love feels like. In the end, reaching an avoidant heart isn't about chasing, convincing, or controlling. It's about embodying calm, grounded love that gives space instead of pressure, presence instead of persuasion, and freedom instead of fear. When you choose to stand in your truth, hold space, and love without losing yourself, you create the kind of safety that makes even the most guarded heart want to open. Thank you for listening, for showing up with curiosity and courage, and for being willing to love in a way that is both strong and gentle, because real love doesn't chase, it invites.